You said the other day Donald Trump is a TV star, nothing more, nothing less, and that, quote, if we put him back in the White House, the reruns will be worse than the original show was. Why worse?
Oh, because he's so angry now. He's angry and he's vengeful, and he said, I will be your retribution. Well, I don't want him to be my retribution. I don't need him to do that, and I don't think anybody in America needs it either. He wants to be retribution for himself. I am convinced that if he goes back to the White House, that the next 4 years will all be about him just settling scores, Anderson, with everybody who he thinks wasn't perfectly nice to him. You know, and the bottom line is that if you're lucky enough to become the President of the United States, every day you should wake up thinking about what you do for the people of this country, not what scores you need to settle for yourself. And he has shown himself, and I think particularly in his post-presidency, to be completely self-centered, completely self-consumed, and doesn't give a damn about the American people, in my view, if what the American people want is in conflict with what Donald Trump thinks is best for him. And I don't think that's who we want sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office.
I want to ask you about the indictments that we've seen. Yesterday, former Attorney General Bill Barr called the indictment, quote, very damning, and he said if even half of it is true, then he's toast. You're a former U.S. attorney, is he right?
It is a very tight, very detailed, evidence-laden indictment, and the conduct in there is awful. I mean, put aside taking the documents in the first place, but then when you start getting asked, Anderson, in May of 21, nicely, with a letter from the archivist saying, could you please give them back? And you ignore it, ignore it, ignore it. Then they come with a grand jury subpoena, and then according to the indictment, you tell your lawyers, tell them we don't have anything, even though you have dozens and dozens of boxes of material. That's obstruction of justice if it's true. And so I think the former Attorney General is absolutely right. And look, I did this for 7 years in New Jersey. We did 130 political corruption prosecutions without a loss. What I could tell you for sure I know about that indictment is there's probably about a third of the evidence they actually have is in that indictment.
There's a lot more.
There will guaranteed be a lot more. When you're a prosecutor, you never put every card on the table before the trial. And so there's going to be a lot more.
As indictments, I mean, you've had a lot of experience with indictments. This one is very detailed.
It is. It's what we call in the business a speaking indictment. Because remember, when you're the prosecutor, you can't comment beyond what's in the four corners of that document. So I think that Jack Smith understood that the American people were going to need a fulsome explanation if you're going to bring an indictment against the former president of the United States, and I think he was right. So that is much more detail than you'd see in the typical indictment. But also, don't be fooled. There's a lot more information to come when they go to trial. Specifically, I think there are going to be a lot of witnesses who actually worked for Donald Trump who are now going to be testifying against him.
In the 37 counts, what to you is the most egregious?
Well, the most? Can I get the three most? I mean, you know, because there's so much. I mean, first it's the nature of the documents that he kept. I mean, battle plans against Iran, nuclear secrets, the presidential daily brief, which has the most important intelligence information that anyone in the country can get. These are not his personal documents. This isn't like his doodle notes on his pad or like a nice, newspaper article about himself. These are intelligence documents created by the government of the United States. It's our property, and the government's supposed to have that stuff, not laying around. That's one. Two, to suggest to your lawyers that they should lie in response to a grand jury subpoena. I've had a number of people ask me, why did his lawyer make those voice memos about each meeting? I know why he did, because this guy was asking him to lie and break the law, and he wanted a contemporaneous recording of exactly what was happening, when it was happening, because he also knew that Donald Trump, as he's done before, would throw his lawyer under the bus and say the lawyer was lying. The third thing is he is voluntarily putting our country through this. If at any point before the search in August of 22, he had just done what anyone I suspect in this audience would have done, which is say, all right, you're serious? You're serving a grand jury subpoena? Let me just give the documents back. He wouldn't have been charged. He wouldn't have been charged with anything, even though he had kept them for almost a year and a half.
None of this had to happen.
None of this would happen. This is all him saying, again, it's what I was saying at the top. He's saying, I'm more important than the country. These are my papers. You saw in the indictment, His employees were scared. They always call them his boxes. His boxes. He wants his boxes near him. He flew the boxes up to New Jersey for summer vacation. What is this, like they're a family member? I mean, seriously, I got to have my boxes with me. And let me ask you a question. What exactly was he doing with them? Did someone remind him he's not the president anymore? You don't need these things anymore. This is vanity run amok, Anderson. Run amok. Ego run amok. And he is now going to put this country through this when we didn't have to go through it. Everyone's blaming the prosecutors. He did it. It's his conduct.
You know him very well.
Yes.
Why do you think he did it? I mean,
he cannot live with the fact that he lost to Joe Biden. He can't live with it. And look, I watched the way Joe Biden's performing. I'd be pretty bummed out too if I'd lost to Joe Biden. But the fact is he did. And he wants to continue to pretend he's president. He wants the trappings of the presidency around him. And I think one of those trappings is these documents that he can wave around to people as they detail in the indictment. This is secret. I can't show you. I might have been able to show you, but now I can't. But this is what it's about. I had someone call me right after the raid last August and say, you know him so well. Like, is he trying to sell these things to a foreign government? Is he trying to blackmail someone? I said, oh, for God's sake, stop. This is just to show off. It's just to show off, and it turned out to be right. And that's what makes it so ridiculous that we're here and we're in a situation where there are people in my own party who are blaming DOJ. How about blame him? He did it. He took documents he wasn't supposed to take. He kept them when they asked him back for them. They got a grand jury subpoena. He refused to comply. They raided his home finally because he refused to comply. All of those things were brought on himself, as was this indictment.
I actually a number of prominent Republicans have been reluctant to talk about the substance of actually what's in. I know you've noticed, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He tweeted, "quote The weaponization of federal law enforcement represents a mortal threat to a free society." Why do you think they're not addressing what's actually in the indictment?
Because it's indefensible, and they're playing games. Look, you all need to know this. They're playing political games with you. Because they think if you kind of like Trump a little bit, and I don't say anything bad about Trump, and then Trump kind of implodes and goes away, then you're more likely to vote for me. How about we do this? How about you decide who is the most honest, forthright leader, who has common sense and will put you first, and let's put that person behind the desk in the Oval Office. How about we stop these games? And I think that's a game where you want to, and look, I've said this before, Anderson. Like, I was someone who thought Hillary Clinton should have been prosecuted, and I think it was wrong. And I think Jim Comey made a mess of the FBI, and he made a mess of that case. Loretta Lynch, I don't know what she was thinking about in letting Jim Comey announce that no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute that case. He's the FBI director. It's not your decision. It's the Attorney General's decision. And that has made some Republicans rightfully feel like there's two standards. We can have that argument, and we should. We should have that argument because it's wrong. And I can tell you this, if I'm president of the United States, one thing you can count on for sure, there's going to be an attorney general who I say to him or her, day one, go do your job, and unless you need me for something, leave me alone. Just go and do your job without fear or favor or partisanship. And that's what we need as an attorney general. And I think we can have that argument discussion, and we should. But that should not allow these other candidates to then say, oh, but I don't want to talk about anything else. I saw Lee Zeldin yesterday tying himself in knots to not answer, what do you think of the conduct? Look, everybody, whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like Donald Trump, this conduct is inexcusable, in my opinion, for somebody who wants to be president of the United States. Let's say, for instance, I'm looking at these two leading candidates right now, at Joe Biden and at Donald Trump. Let's say it's 60 years now since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's say there was a Cuban Missile Crisis again. And by the way, China's putting surveillance in Cuba as we speak. So this is not a far-fetched example. Do you think Joe Biden could actually handle it? Do you think he's up to it at his age? And secondly, would you trust Donald Trump's judgment after all of this to handle something like that? I think the answer to both those questions is no, and that's why I'm running for president.
The special counsel, Jack Smith, has said he wants a speedy trial while protecting the former president's rights. Do you think this will go to trial before the election?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think it could go to the election. I think it could go to trial this winter because, and I don't want to get too in the weeds as a former prosecutor, but they have something in South Florida called the Rocket Docket. They're a district, Southern District of Florida, that cares about the Speedy Trial Act, which says 70 days from the day of your initial appearance, which is tomorrow. Now, they won't do that because it's too complex a case. But could I see this case going to trial in 6 to 8 months from tomorrow? I could.